The focus of the Trump presidency in the last couple of weeks has shifted to foreign affairs. After nearly 100 days of focus on domestic policy and the press saying, gee, the health care bill failed, tax reform has been delayed at the very least, and no major legislative accomplishments, suddenly Trump on the world stage has become the story, starting with the bombing, the airstrikes against Syria in the wake of that chemical attack, the mother of all bombs dropped on Afghanistan, and now kind of a war of words with North Korea, which is making all kinds of nuclear threats. Understandably, that's being written about more, and as often happens in the wake of military action, the president blipping up in the polls a little bit, up 6 points in the Quinnipiac poll to 40%, so that's an improvement for him. So as there is this focus now on Iran, North Korea, and Syria, and ISIS, the media storyline has changed a little bit, as encapsulated by this tweet by Glenn Thrush, reporter for the New York Times, who says, "Will he talk us into a war?" Now, this links to a story in the Times, co-authored by Thrush, in which, and this reflects some of the other coverage as well, Mr. Trump's confrontational and improvisational approach to foreign affairs has lifted his mood, his fortune, and his polling numbers. But the chest thumping and the real action, real military action, raising this question, the biggest risk critics say, there are always critics out there, is that Mr. Trump will talk us into a war, or talk himself, I should say, into a war. Now, it is true that if you take a more aggressive approach to foreign policy, and if you actually unleash Tomahawk missiles against Syria, as opposed to threatening to do it in the wake of a chemical attack and then doing nothing, as Barack Obama did, you are taking risks. If you drop the mother of all bombs against ISIS, you are taking risks. If you are escalating the rhetoric against the kind of crazy regime in North Korea, sure, you are taking risks, and that is absolutely fair game for journalistic scrutiny and for public debate. But there are also risks to inaction. And as the president, who, you know, the press thinks is kind of a neophyte in foreign affairs, brings this more aggressive style. And as some of his aides are talking tough, sometimes tougher than the president himself, whether it's Nikki Haley, whether it's Rex Tillerson, H.R. McMaster, when they talk about Russia or Iran or ISIS, they are using some very strong language. Well, that's how you send signals. Sometimes they can be confusing signals, but I think the president likes to leave some ambiguity about just what he might do. So sure, there are risks to a more aggressive, more muscular approach to foreign affairs. But I think the thing that the journalists need to keep in mind, perhaps the public needs to keep in mind, is there are risks to doing nothing. And we have seen some of those risks with the rise of ISIS. Not that the previous administration didn't try to do anything against ISIS, but didn't make a lot of progress most of the time. And it's a big challenge, fighting terrorism, fighting ISIS, what to do in Syria, what to do in the Middle East. These are all very difficult challenges for a president who not only does not have a big foreign affairs background, but has never worked in government before. But I think the press ought to keep an open mind here as we try to evaluate this very different, more aggressive, more tough-talking approach by this president. Just remember that the risk of doing nothing is something that also doesn't always work out so well for the United States.